Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Adventurers University. Now, today we're going to discuss lore in your world. This is going to be a pretty big topic, so we're going to divide it into multiple videos. Today, we're going to start with the two categories of lore, which I'm going to define as the macro and micro lore. So macro lore and micro lore are kind of like the player knowledge versus character knowledge, or the reader knowledge versus the character knowledge. The difference between micro and macro is the macro lore is stuff that even if the characters don't know it, you may know it, or the readers or the players may know it. For example, in Dungeons and Dragons, a troll is uh, can regenerate, and they unless they take fire damage. I think there's a couple other things that can prevent them from regenerating as well. The micro lore would be the elements of how much do the people in this world know about this? If trolls are commonplace, then perhaps everyone knows it. Everyone has a torch in their backpack because if you don't and you run into a troll, then you're dead meat. Or maybe trolls are something that only certain people meet, and so you have a guide that knows this, or you need to read your adventure manual, which will tell you all about trolls. But your common farmer is probably not ever going to meet a troll. So why do they need to know about it? Maybe one or two people just happen to know it in town, but it's not commonplace knowledge. Or maybe they're ancient beings. Maybe this is a really low magic setting. uh, but the point is, maybe they're just so uncommon that only certain people know what a troll even is. So when you encounter, it's like, what is that? Like, oh gosh! Uh, but in contrast, the macro knowledge, people are like, oh man, that's a troll. They can regenerate. They have these many hit points. They're this hard to hit. They have these attacks. There's a difference there of the player or reader, etc., and the people that you're reading about or playing as. In Lord of the Rings, Gandalf goes off and learns about the One Ring. He is suspicious of the One Ring. He doesn't know specifically what it is until after Bilbo gives it to Frodo. He gives it the very memeable line, keep it secret, keep it safe, as he goes to learn about it. He finds the ancient texts about the One Ring, comes back, and tells Frodo about it. We learn that it is the One Ring and that it is able to do all these things and it is evil, must be destroyed, etc., etc., etc. That is the micro lore, the stuff that in the world people don't know unless they seek out the knowledge. There's also things like local fairy tales or things. It doesn't even have to be lore per se. Go ahead and check out my video on including discrepancies in your storytelling, because that's also a big element of this. How much do people know? Is it common knowledge that the boogeyman's going to come get you if you do X, Y, and Z? Is it only the well-educated or the is it lost knowledge that is reobtained after diving into this deep catacomb and you find things? Is it the same stuff that treasure hunters dig up? There are plenty of stories where the macro takes front and center. For example, the Bartimaeus sequence book series of uh, wizards summoning demons to power their magic, and it's the story told from the point of view of one of these demons, largely at least. Um, the In this there are these massive footnotes. Some of the pages are more footnote than the rest of the book, of just side notes and tangents of certain events that happened in the past. The Discworld series is another example where they just have little excerpts here and there to explain to the reader about what is happening. Usually, at least in these two series, they're more humorous. They try to make it amusing so it's not just, oh, you don't know this about this world, let me tell you. They make it into a joke so people are excited to read them. But even if it's not that, you can insert your macro knowledge into things in different ways. Another example of macro lore is inserting things like maps or diagrams, things that are for the readers and players or whatever it is that the characters may not know right away or may not know ever. That said, the biggest way that players and readers learn the macro is through micro lore gaining of knowledge, if that makes sense. uh, the uh, the character doesn't know this information, therefore they learn it, and therefore the players and readers learn it as well. And this stretches between multiple books, games, etc. This is how a lot of the world lore that Lord of the Rings and Star Wars expanded universe, etc. Well, Legends, Star Wars Legends now, all that has, because even though each book or campaign or whatever has its own set of things that the characters would or wouldn't know, collectively, the readers and players have accumulated this wealth of knowledge. Uh, Over here, X, Y, and Z happened. Over here, A, B, and C happened. Then, et cetera, et cetera. More stuff happens in the other places. People get the whole spectrum of this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. We have a little bit of not sure what happens in this area, but and then another book comes out. Aha, we filled this gap. And this is where I think that a lot of people both succeed and fail at a lot. The Harry Potter series had it was really fun, rich with lore. The world building was fantastic. There were a few things like why was that specific period of time the time that inventions started being more muggle than magic. Anyways, I'm not going to get into that. But um, when they moved on to the new series, the Fantastic Beasts, I personally really liked the first movie of that. It was interesting, expanded on the world. We explored more regions of the magical aspect of this world. But when it started expanding into becoming a prequel series, trying to explain different things about the world, it started getting really. I don't even want to like. I don't want to make this into a review on Harry Potter, but I've had talked to a lot of people who agreed with me that it was when they moved into prequel materials that it became less good. The Lord of the Rings with the Rings of Power is another example. Again, I don't want to make it a critique thing, like I'm not reviewing the series, but Lord of the Rings has established lore. The macro lore exists. The movie tries to focus on the micro lore. Uh, the they have Galadriel, and then they bring in other characters, etc. Elrond. They try to make it kind of a prequel. Like this is stuff that you didn't know before, um, but they fail, in my opinion, because we already have established lore. The macro exists, and they're ignoring so many elements of that. And even though they have these micro situations where we're picking up new things here and there, things that weren't discussed in the macro, there are other things that they just completely threw out so they can fit the story that they're trying to tell. I guess another thing to call the macro lore is the continuity. That's a little less what I'm talking about, but yes, the that is one thing to look at when looking at your macro level of lore. And that's where we'll leave off today. We'll talk more about actually constructing some micro levels of lore. In fact, that at this point, I think we'll focus primarily on the micro. Macro, like I said earlier, is largely obtained through unless it's your style, through the characters learning things over a series of time. So the micro is arguably the more important level of it, and it's also the part that's more fun when you're creating things. but we'll talk about how to insert lore next time into your world, the actual implementing, as well as perhaps ways to brainstorm and come up with ways to decide what kind of lore you want in your world. So, but I do want to give a shout out to my patrons and my subscribers. If you want to help support me so I can make more of these videos for everyone, go ahead and head to patreon.com/adventurersuniversity, and I have multiple tiers, $1, etc. But you can also hit that like button and hit that subscribe button and that notification bell if you want to see when the next one comes up. So until next time, have fun.